Live and online, it's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
Back and better than ever, Sleepless with Steve, live and in living color on this Wednesday evening, wherever you may be, however you may be listening to us. Coast to coast, live every Wednesday evening, and it's just the two of us once again. Just the two of us. Just a two-man show today. We're making do, though. However, Dom was off last week. Joe is off this week. I hold out hope that the three of us will reunite next week for our Blue Beetle review. Had to shake some things up, or didn't really have to, but I'll explain why I opted for a late in the game switch for the movie we're talking about today in just a few minutes. But good to be with you. Got Dominic Guanzon over here, back from a week sabbatical. I know it probably really wasn't a sabbatical given your hours and how much you do work over there, Dom, and everything like that. But hope you're doing well, my friend. It is great to see you tonight.
It's good to see you as well. And hold on. There we go. Do I sound a little more normal?
Yeah, you sound good.
Okay, good. Because I think I had a voice changer on. But long story, various long stories. But yeah, I was telling these, I took a mental health break last week. It was sorely needed. Great strategic move. And I was telling Steve and Joe in the chat that the years stop coming and they don't stop coming, which is, I cannot believe the mileage we got out of that song as kind of an anthem for millennial life. But here we are. And we're in the closing throes of summer. We'll see what other kind of heat waves come. I think this is going to be a hot fall. This is going to be a hot girl fall.
I hope not, but I do think summer is going to linger.
I'm not hoping for it.
Much of September.
Yeah, exactly. I think because like last week, at least here in Chicagoland, was the first like big heat wave. I think before that there were some hot days, but it wasn't like last week.
Now we're talking like upper 90s. Like it was rough. It got to I think 99 out here on Wednesday. It was terrible. I mean, it was like to the point water didn't even taste good.
Like events were being canceled, like left and right. That's when you know. In the evening too, like it's not. Here's the killer. And I know that's the Midwest joke of like humidity, but which is true. But it's the wet bulb temperature. That's the killer. Where it's so moist outside. There's so much moisture in the air. Your body literally, I know you know this, Steve, but your body literally cannot like perspire to cool itself down. So you're literally burning up in an oven inside, despite being in the shade. And heaven help you if your AC breaks. That's even more dangerous. So that's climate change, baby. So that's a good time.
I figured out my camera over here real quick. I told you in the green room that I had to try and create a new Zoom account. I had to create a new Zoom account. And I was wondering, I was like, why am I so damn close? And I have like no headroom or anything. And lo and behold, that was the reason I had to switch some video settings here quickly. So now I'm more so out of, I'm not feeling like I'm on top of the video. But anyway. It was hotter than hell last week. That's to say the least. And it's going to be hotter than hell again this weekend for Labor Day. And then I saw next week, I think Monday is 96 out here in Eastern Iowa again. I don't know, probably about the same by you, but it's going to be another hot one. I'm in agreement with you. I think September is going to be pretty warm for the most part.
You're right. No, here at least the iPhone is telling me Monday high of 95 here in Chicagoland. That's definitely a hotter Labor Day, but it's all relative, right? After last week, 95 is like a blizzard compared to that. We will see if I have work or not. I'm a little miffed because I have work this weekend every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Sunday's different obligation, but still an obligation, and I'm gonna miss Chicago Jazz Festival. Because, being a suburbanite, I have to take the BNSF Metro line which is like an hour in and out. So it's like, well, work is like in the middle of the day, so it doesn't make sense to go out and go back. The city is the goal. That is the dream. City of Dreams that Chicago is. But we will see if I can make out to Hyde Park Jazz Festival, Englewood Jazz Festival. September is like jazz month. I don't know how that came to be, but it is.
Be careful at the Englewood Jazz Festival.
Yeah, no, the players there, they get really aggressive when they get hot on it, which I know is what you were referencing. But it's like every weekend of September, there's a jazz festival in the city, and it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I still need to make it out to one of those. Like the Green Mill or something like that. Like maybe not a festival, but like a lounge.
Yeah, I mean, a festival's a different ball game, which is true for any festival, let alone jazz one. But the nothing like Lollapalooza. But yeah, I'll take you out to a club one of these days.
I would love that, my friend. Yeah, we got a good show, though, for you today. Gran Turismo is the movie we are talking about. We were going to do Blue Beetle today, but I called an audible. Joe and I, bloviated about it at the tail end of last show because I wanted Joe to talk about it in a way. I wanted to save it so Joe was here because Joe actually has some familiarity with the comic character. And, he's like our resident, superhero fan. So I figured that his perspective would loan something and stuff. So he was actually the one who suggested, he goes, why don't you and Dom review Gran Turismo, see if he's down to see that and talk about that. And then we can regroup and review Blue Beetle next week, which makes a lot of sense. There's not really a ton out now. Well, there is a ton out. There's not a ton new that's coming out. There's the Equalizer 3, which I made the joke to Catherine when we were at the theater this weekend to see Gran Turismo. I made the joke. I said, they could have called it the Threequalizer. And then the last one could have been called the Sequelizer.
Yeah, I just thought that's really good. They could have at
least made it 3 QUIs. You know what I mean? Like they at least could have used it in the title.
Because that series was already ridiculous. The Denzel Washington series was already ridiculous by the end of the first movie. And they were playing off of it in that first movie. Second one, it tried to get more personal, and it did, but it didn't really have the same effect because the first one is like a revenge power trip. The second one is, I don't know, it's very forgettable, and this third one just looks balls to the wall crazy in a not entertaining way. But I don't know, and I kind of don't care.
I haven't seen any of them, but I do think this though. I think about this every time I see a trailer for those movies is because they've been pretty middle of the road in terms of reviews, the reception they get and everything. They obviously make money, but they're pretty middling reviews. But it's interesting to me because if you think about it, Denzel Washington doesn't just do really any movie. Denzel Washington is pretty particular from even what I've read, and just as you can see, he doesn't do a lot of movies just to do them. You know what I mean? So he's pretty choosy with his projects. So I thought it was interesting that this is series, or what this movie at first attracted him and then eventually became a series.
This is there has to be some reason, which is that it's either easy money, it's a physical role, so I don't think it'd be the easiest money in the world. Or it's his own power trip fantasy where he gets to beat up on dudes.
He might be a producer on them too.
I haven't checked, and I won't.
He might be a producer on them. I don't know. I don't care much to see that. Bottom still isn't out here yet, and isn't going to be next weekend.
There's the Queen Latifah Equalizer series. I don't know if that's still on the air.
Is there?
There was or is. I don't know. And again, I don't care.
The Latifah-lizer. I don't know, but good hell. But. Yeah, so there's not a ton coming out, though, in the next couple of weeks. So our reviews might get a little bit wonky here. I do know that Joe recommended a documentary I'm going to try to watch next week. It's called BS High, which is about that fake championship high school. I remember that game. I can't remember the name of the actual school here. I'm trying to look it up real quick. But it was when ESPN broadcast the game of that the Bishop Sycamore Centurions. They were playing a nationally televised game on ESPN. I don't know the full inner workings of it, but I remember it was 65-0 or something outrageous with this team. And it was and then I remember the next day, everybody was how this high school managed to get on nationally televised game on ESPN, inexplicably or something.
Even though it's not a real high school and it's not a real team.
It's peculiar. It's very
That's
weird.
Incredible.
But we're gonna review that, I think, the week after Blue Beetle, and then next month we have The Creator, which was looking very interesting too. We have that one. We have a couple others next month already lined up. But At any rate, though, I'm already making the joke too because my Big Fat Greek Wedding 3 comes out in a couple of weeks, and like if you've seen the poster for that movie and how weird that poster looks, I'm like
Yeah.
this might be the first like movie written and directed by AI and we don't even know it. Like I mean, it just looks everything about this movie looks off. Everything about it just looks really really off. But I mean,
I mean that director, she's only made like movies about Greece and her family.
Nia Vardalos,
The first one was a big hit, and I enjoyed it. But
one of the
after
most
that, she's
successful
kinda,
independent movies of all time.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
for real.
yeah,
It's
like
was it set in Chicago?
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, if they really wanted to be clever, it would have been called My Big Fat Greek Divorce. You know, if they really wanted to be clever with it, you know what I mean? Like the sequel would have been like My Big Fat Greek Anniversary, and then this one would have been My Big Fat Greek Divorce. You know what I mean? Um, you know what I mean? But anyway, one can dream. But at any rate, we're gonna talk about that, and then I know Dom's got some thoughts on this. I was enjoying catching up on this story too, but I'm gonna let Dom take the wheel on VFX workers at Disney filing for unionization with IATSE. So that's gonna be an interesting thing to talk about amidst all the crap that's been going on too with the Writers Guild strike, with the SAG-AFTRA strike, and everything like that. There's a lot going on, and this definitely adds fuel to the fire. So we will touch on that at the end. But we will commence now with Gran Turismo. I guess first things first, Dom. You play the Gran Turismo games?
I did not play the Gran Turismo games.
Really, you did?
Really,
I thought you would have.
I actually was thinking about that going into this review. I was like, they're probably going to ask me if I played it or not. I was more of a Ridge Racer, same platform, same. It's still Japanese, but it was more of a Ridge Racer guy, or Ridge Racer or Daytona USA, which is Sega,
cuts.
I want to say.
I like California Speed for the N64.
California Speed was good, and then Crash Team Racing, Looney Tunes Racing. Those are the more American ones, which are honestly kind of trash.
Simpsons Hit and Run.
Simpsons, yeah. So okay. Well, we're getting in that case. That's more like a GTA game. Dude. Honestly, Simpsons Hit and Run was baller. There was Road Rage, which was the Crazy Taxi clone, but with the Simpsons coat of paint. And then Hit and Run was the big one with like a storyline. You get to like kick people. that game. I don't know if it would hold up well in a replay as an adult, but as a kid and as a Simpsons, kind of a fan. It was a good time. Yeah, but Gran Turismo, it was definitely more in the simulator route, as the movie makes very, very clear. And as such, I really wasn't into it all that much. I'm not really into like trying to simulate. I'm not into like Euro Truck Simulator, American Truck Simulator. All that. The only simulator I like is Goat Simulator.
Goat Simulator.
There you go.
Goat Simulator. That's pretty sweet. I did play briefly during COVID a big rig simulator. I don't remember what it was called, but you could like pick your trucking company and go on a bunch of like cross country. Like you get like I remember the one trip
with like
I
a very simulated like map of the
Oh
U.S.
God, it was almost real time. It was like you had to go to like Wyoming, like to Alabama.
I think that's
and you're
American
just
Truck
driving in a
Simulator.
goddamn truck. And the cool part is you got to make your company and stuff. I made mine. I played it for like 2 days only because somebody at work was playing it. They're like, "You should try this out." I'm like, and my computer could barely handle it because it was a newer game, but so it lagged a little bit. But I made my company. I remember after Siskel and Ebert, my cats, it was S&E Logistics.
2 thumbs up, way up.
I'm just like, oh my God, that was like June of COVID. That was like June of COVID over here. I'm like driving a big rig. But at any rate, Gran Turismo, I never played the games. I sucked at racing games, so I never played many. I never really did. Double Dash, obviously Mario Kart. That was one I played. I remember.
Mario.
And
nowadays it's Mario Kart. That's the one that everyone kind of has settled on as the standard for a kart racer, as a party game, as more of a casual game, and it's good. Can't deny that.
Oh, it's a great game. And Need for Speed though was one that I did play. I remember that got me and my best friend through high school, or freshman year of high school at least. That was the game we played during the summer, and then in the early part of fall was Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, I think.
Hot Pursuit was there a Need for Speed LA?
Probably.
Either
or you might
Need
be
for
thinking
Speed
of
LA
Midnight Club.
Something like that. But anyway, I have fond memories where my best man, Jake, we were playing that at his whole house in high school. And it's like, hey, there's a cheat code that makes all the cars go like times 1,000 acceleration. So it just becomes pure chaos. It just completely breaks the game. Like the cops can't even catch you because they're so fast. They go past you and then they crash. And it's just so funny to see that. And it's like a Looney Tunes game. It's absolutely ridiculous. And we just laugh at that for hours, just breaking the game. So I'm very glad that we've had our review of like car-based driving games.
I never played many of them. I never played Gran Turismo and stuff. Like you said, it felt advanced for me. Like it felt like very much like the minutia of racing simulators.
Yeah.
Which I'm not into.
Honestly, I think we're the kind of guys that have more fun like planning to play it than actually playing it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a theory.
Yeah,
like here's the thing. Like I'm gonna be like Jan in this movie too, and buy a goddamn steering wheel. You know what I mean?
People have like rigs, dude. People have.
Oh, I know they do. I know they do.
Massive thousands of dollars. That's
it's like
hobby.
flight simulators. People buy the controls and everything like that. It's a huge thing.
And more power to them. I just cannot do it. I think the closest thing we'll get to is really Grand Theft Auto. That's like the peak driving experience that we have in video games is GTA.
Now, here's the thing that this movie does really interesting. First things first, is directed by Neil Blomkamp, who did District 9.
Absolutely crazy.
District 9. And Blomkamp, we'll get into him later. I don't want to touch on him yet, because this is only his fourth movie in 14 years. 14 years. Yeah, 14 years ago, District 9 came out. Very interesting career, to say the least. But we'll talk about Blomkamp here in a minute. The thing that's interesting about this movie, and it shows you how little I knew about this movie going into it, it's doing two things. This movie's kind of working twofold. It's based on the video game, but it's also based on a true story of Jan Mardenborough, who's played by Archie Madekwe. I think that's how you say his name. I should have looked it up. But the story of Mardenborough, who was a gamer, not really a gamer, but he was always fascinated with racing, especially the Gran Turismo games. He got involved in this contest, this very exclusive contest with Nissan and PlayStation, and that made the GT Academy that wanted to turn the best Gran Turismo players in the world into race car drivers. And it's first off, holy shit, there's a documentary to be made, and there might even be one about how that even got off the ground. I don't know, with the liability concerns and everything. I don't know how the hell. I remember I was I think I was telling, we saw it together, me and Catherine. I was like, how the hell did this even happen? Did they get this off the ground to do? It's a cool idea, but it's one of those that's rife with tragedy waiting to happen.
And it did happen.
Kind of did. Yeah, and did happen. But the movie works twofold, though. It's based off the video game. It gives you some of the stylistic components that the video game, the racing simulator itself, does. But then it also tells this story of Mardenborough, who is a professional racer, a very accomplished one, too, I might add, who went on to have a really solid career. But otherwise, though, the movie is basically about Mardenborough, who's kind of not really on a distinct path to really anywhere. He gets involved. He goes to the GT Academy. He gets involved with this contest, goes to the GT Academy, which is put on by this real smarmy ass marketing executive for Nissan, played by Orlando Bloom.
Orlando Bloom is channeling his Elizabethtown, if you remember that movie. Where the opening, my favorite part of that movie, which is not a good movie, my favorite part of Elizabethtown is the opening 5 minutes where it's him and Alec Baldwin just hey, your whole world is crashing down because you made this massive mistake and here it is. And he's channeling that and I appreciate it.
And then you have David Harbour, too, who's just a great character actor. David Harbour plays the former racer who trains these Jan and these 9 other racers that are competing in this GT Academy. And then eventually he goes to the Le Mans race and everything. Mardenborough does. And it basically reiterates the story of how he went from sort of a directionalist 20-something to a professional race car driver and all the formulaic biopic tropes that work. So again, it's a biographical movie and it's a video game movie too, which is very interesting for this thing. I think the first thing to say too is that If we, well, I'll let you. I kind of gave an overview and just a little bit of a generalization there. What's your general thoughts on Gran Turismo? We'll start there.
When I first heard of this movie, I just rolled my eyes so hard. I'm like, really? They made a Gran Turismo movie? And then walking out of it, I'm like, going into it still, I was just floored that this was even a thing. It's like, this is gonna be, this feels like it's gonna be what the Barbie movie would have been in the worst case scenario, which was the old version before Greta Gerwig had it in her hands. And coming out of it, so I didn't know that this actually was based on a true story. I know the marketing all says based on a true story, but honestly, it just never registered to me because this story is legitimately insane. And when the movie ends and closes with like a montage showing the real Jan Morgensen. Did I say that right? Martinborough. Sorry. That was Jan Morgensen. Martinborough. And coming out of that, I actually muttered to myself under my breath. I was like, are you shitting me? Are you fucking shitting me right now? Because it's like, they really did it. They really did this. They really took a bunch of gamers and put them in race car drivers going 200 plus miles per hour and literally killed someone. And we'll cover that part of the story later. And the fact that there's a true success story out of it is absolutely flabbergasting. But for me, this movie is a miracle that it got to be so competent. It's competently made. It's effective. It is a solid biographical film, because that's what this gamer movie is. I am so happy that this film did not fall into the trap of what gamer movies a decade and a half ago would have fallen into, which is try to play into the game way too much. Try to do what Scott Pilgrim was kind of making fun of. With all the pow and all the, all the little things around it that make it funny. And that's the stuff like, oh, Edgar Wright looked at that and just like, hey, we can actually do this in a way we can lead into it in a positive way, as opposed to leading onto it as a crutch. There were some hints of it here and there with some iconic like Easter egg sound effects, but for the most part, I mean, to be fair, there's really not much of a story in Gran Turismo anyway. There's really not much to have as a crutch, so that was never gonna be an option, I think. And the real story is GT Academy. That really is the crazy part. And the thinner but still other directions that they could have taken with it, they chose the safest route, and they were able to get away with it, because I had a decent time, a positive time. The weakest parts of this movie, I think we'll agree on, is the opening like third, maybe even the first 2/3, and then it manages to stick the landing. That's what I'll say in the macro. I don't know how you feel about that.
I can agree with that. I didn't think any strong, I didn't think this movie was ever bad for a stretch, or even really mediocre. I do think it's long.
It's over like 2 hours, right?
2 hours and 15 minutes. I do think it's long.
Even with credits, that's like 2 and 10.
And it shows its length a few times. And I do have criticisms with it. I do think before we head to break, though, I will say, Neil Blomkamp is a fascinating director, in my opinion.
Oh my God.
He's a really fascinating director. I mean, this is if there's ever more proof that somebody's first movie being a breakout success. And I mean, when I talk breakout success, it's not that District 9 made money. District 9 was up for 4 Oscars. And Neil Blomkamp, let me get this right. Neil Blomkamp, he's what? I want to say 43 now. 14 years ago, he was 29. So he was 28. He was about our age.
He's literally my age at the time of District 9, and that is
when he made District 9.
That's insane. And I love that movie. That's a great movie. Critically, commercially, I don't want to say, I hesitate to say pioneering, but I want to say
It was definitely different for what it was.
He debuted a very distinct style, and I would like to get into that a little bit with how that goes into Gran Turismo, or rather doesn't really. And
then he followed it up with, it was a few years, and
Elysium,
then he followed it up with Elysium. And then nobody really liked Elysium.
That's like a very forgettable movie.
Was very mixed, and it was very bland. And then came Chappie, which I was defending Chappie when it came out. I haven't seen it since. Chappie, I liked it quite a bit.
Chappie, so Elysium, let me just say, it was so heavy-handed, it freaking hurts. There are some good moments and some great visual effects that Blomkamp will never disappoint on. But it just wound up being very, very forgettable and so heavy-handed. And then Chappie, I actually don't think I've ever seen it front to back. I think I've only seen it like at home, and this was years ago, like at my parents' house for some scenes. But so I really can't comment on it too much. But how that goes into like Gran Turismo, it didn't. Do you feel like this was made by Neil Blomkamp? Literally, I know it was. I'm not conspiring. But
in parts, I mean, Blomkamp has kind of been like all over the place, though. Like in District 9, followed by Elysium, and then Chappie. And then there was actually, I didn't even know of this until this weekend. He did a horror movie a couple of years ago called Demonic, which was critically reviled, like 15% on Rotten Tomatoes. Awful. And he's like the sole producer. He's the sole writer. He's like the director. So I don't really know what happened with Blomkamp. Like, it's not like a Josh Trank level flame out, but it's just interesting. Like, it further shows once again that like these directors that catch lightning in a bottle that are like in their late 20s or early 30s that come out of friggin' nowhere. Like, it's not always an easy ascension. And it's kind of, it's really surprising. I don't know if he got offers or he just rejected it. I don't know the biography of Blomkamp. I find him very fascinating. You got to wonder if he was, because it was right that time, 09. You wonder if like Marvel ever like approached him. You know what I mean? Or I'd be shocked if they didn't.
Okay, actually, so something about Neil Blomkamp is that he has a YouTube kind of short film series / production company called Oats Entertainment or Oats Production, Oats something. If you look up Oats Neil Blomkamp, there's a host of short YouTube videos, short films, very short, and they're great. I love them. They can't. I hesitate to say that they would ever be effective outside of the short film format or the very short video format, but they're great visual effects showcases and great like emotional, great scene showcases. Steve, if you ever have like an afternoon on a Saturday, go through Oats. I think you would at least appreciate them for what they are, and I just outright enjoy them because I do. And that was I want to say during Chappie, and then like for like 3-4 years after that, and he was doing that. And I think he's just, yeah, you're right. He captured lightning in a bottle, and then he's been, I don't want to say middling. That's very harsh. That sounds very harsh to say, but he's been trying to live up to. It sounds like he's been trying to live up to District 9. And I think he just hasn't been able to capture that exact same level of hype here. So it feels like the narrative you can weave just from outside looking in appears to be that Gran Turismo is his way to kind of climb back up in a small kind of way.
Because I mean, you got to think Chappie was 8 years ago.
Yeah,
like his last notable movie was 8 years ago, and he's just fascinating. Now, going back to your original question too, before we go to break, you asked like, does this feel like a Blomkamp movie? You know what? Like, there's elements of this, especially when it comes to like the special effects, that really do, because he has a really deft use of special effects. I know he's not the one creating it, but he's worked on video games in the past before. Yeah. Like, he's got this visual effect background. And you know what the scenes in the movie that feel most like him, and I think they're some of the coolest moments of the movie, is when Jan is playing the game and the car forms around him. and the effects come up and this car starts to just form and then encase him and like he's actually driving. Those moments are like Blomkamp, are very distinctively Blomkamp to me, because it's like human relationship with technology. It's like technology sort of like encroaching on our actual physical presence and such. That's the stuff I love.
I'll say,
Like,
yeah.
and I think he finds a way to incorporate technology. He did this with District 9. He finds a way to incorporate it where it's not a hindrance to the plot, it's at least going to look visually accomplished.
Blomkamp's the thing that he sets apart his visual effects from others is the not gore, but the grittiness of it. I don't want to use the word gritty, but it's so ugly, but not in a bad way. It's so down to earth, particularly in
Rugged.
Elysium. I want to say Elysium, where I mean, certainly in District 9, but Elysium, where they just modify the hell out of Matt Damon's body, where they're putting all that shit on him as a weapon. It's horrific. And if you see his oat stuff on YouTube, it's very much the same.
He's
And
like
you don't,
Cronenberg, except instead of like the body, he's obsessed with like
yeah,
the
but
machinery.
I would argue you don't get that with Gran Turismo, which is why I hesitate to say that this doesn't feel as Blomkamp, because it's too clean. Which is, to be fair, that's kind of what Gran Turismo is that unless you crash, it's a very clean looking game because it's very simulator. It's very kind of pristine in that sense. I know we have to go to break, but yeah.
Yeah, it's far
Yeah.
more crisp. It's far more
Crisp, that's
crisp
a good
than
word.
anything he's ever done. And like you said, that's kind of the commonality with racing simulators and simulators in general. They're meant to look lifelike. With that, we'll take our quick Zoom sponsored intermission. Be back to talk more about Gran Turismo. Feel like we just scratched the surface of this thing, so
Yeah.
we will come back, chat about Gran Turismo here in about 60 to 90 seconds. Don't go anywhere. This is Sleepless with Steve, live on YouTube.
One.
Back and better than ever. Sleepless with Steve.
Woo!
After the Zoom sponsored intermission. I do a little finagling on that one, but we are back. Talking Gran Turismo, the Neil Blomkamp movie. Was kind of diving into Neil Blomkamp's directorial career, a very interesting directorial career to say the least. And again, yeah, you are right though about this, is that it's not as maybe rugged or as gritty as a lot of other Blomkamp movies from a technology standpoint.
And it can't be. It really can't be with this kind of story.
But as far as a simulator is concerned, like it does have that like clean look to it, like not in like a Fast and the Furious kind of way, like a very like hyper realistic way. This movie has this this very distinctive aesthetic, and to be fair, to granted, it's an obscene amount of money, but in the realm of filmmaking, this only cost $60 million. Which is not a lot for something like this. Considering Fast X is one of the most expensive movies of all time, I think this in a lot of ways looks better.
I was thinking about Fast and Furious. I'm like, this is what the Fast and Furious movies used to be about and how they used to make you feel. The racing scenes, particularly the final one, the Le Mans race, was it managed to stick that landing for me and scratch that fast car itch. In a pretty grounded way. I will say, even though it's a lot cleaner than Blomkamp's usual work, it feels a lot more like a race. Like if you had two cars racing like in Fast X, where they insert that drag race in Brazil or whatever, it's like, this means nothing. This feels like nothing. It feels like the most forgettable video game you could imagine. But here, in Gran Turismo Simulator Town, it's a lot more effective, and I have to give it that. That's probably the most effective part of this film, and the thing that people are going. If you saw the did you see the trailers for Gran Turismo, where it's the people coming out of the movie and saying like, "Dude, this was like one of the best racing, things ever made." It's like, no, I don't know how to feel about these.
I kind of missed those. I kind of missed when I kind of missed. I haven't seen one of those style trailers in a while.
I think can we agree that David Harbour pretty much carries the work here for the cast?
I think so. I do think Archie Madekwe, I do think he's good. I do think he's pretty good. He's a little bland, but I don't like it as a character, but I don't think he's a bad actor. I think, I'm going to be honest, I will say this though, and this is one of my main critiques. I think the acting here is a lot stronger than some of the writing in this movie.
Oh yeah, for sure.
This is like one of those movies where if you don't listen to it instinctively, you might think you had you got a great movie on your hands. Like, and I'll just say like the one, and this is like one of the only like direct quotes I can remember, but it's not the only one. But it's early in the movie when Harbour's character was talking to Danny, played by Orlando Bloom, the marketing executive, when the guy's pitching him this idea of plucking racers or video gamers and turning them into racers. And he's like, didn't you used to have dreams as a race car driver, whatever the hell? And then Jack Harbour's character says that life I had is in the rear view. Like, this is that kind of goddamn movie that throws lines like this out there. And it's like, if you don't listen to it like intently, you might overlook it, but like some of the writing in this thing really sucks. The
only real bit of memorable personality that sticks it out from the crowd is that running gag, which is based on real life, is the running gag of him listening to smooth jazz before races, until eventually that
you of all people are going to call Kenny G smooth jazz.
No, well, no. Kenny G is smooth jazz. I don't like smooth jazz.
Okay, yeah. That is the term. I was gonna say thin jazz.
I mean, you're not wrong.
What's that song called? Songbird? Is that what that song's called?
I don't even know the name of it.
Because that's his most famous.
It is.
I recognized it immediately.
Immediately. And then the other one was Enya.
I think I said fucking Kenny G in the theater too when that song came on, because I watched that Kenny G documentary a couple of years ago.
There were opportunities in Gran Turismo to maybe insert more personality into it, but then you run the risk of like marvelizing it, where it's that kind of humor, which I absolutely despise. So if you had to choose between this and that, I guess play it straight for the most part, and you kind of let that one running gag go fine. I mean, Look, it's anyone that calls this movie, and I don't know if we want to pivot to kind of closing thoughts here. If anyone calls this movie bad or garbage, that kind of tells you where they're at as a reviewer. This was a perfectly fine, serviceable movie that sticks a good landing. And coming out of it, I was like, okay, how hard do I really want to go on this? Is that how you're feeling?
I will say, I do have like two other points I'll make too. What a useless love interest.
Yeah,
and Maeve Coitier Lily, useless love interest. She gets she's the reason the fucking Bechdel test exists. She's the reason.
And there were other girl gamers here.
Yeah, like I made the joke to Catherine when he won that race or whatever. There's like a girl, I can't remember her username, but she's clearly a woman. When he's climbing up the leader, like the racing, you know what I mean, the pecking order, like he's passing these racers. There's one girl who's like Nitro. Thank you, Catherine. Nitro Sarah was her not gamer tag, PlayStation ID, whatever it is, her ID. Nitro Sarah. And I nudged Catherine in the middle of it, and I was like. Bet she's gonna try to bang Nitro Sarah by the end of this thing. Like I was wrong, but that's where I was like leaning with that. But I was like, no, I actually there was no reason to have this love interest in this movie whatsoever.
I wonder if the love interest was real, because this is based on a true story. I wonder how much of that was real, because she doesn't show up at the end, or rather, she doesn't show up in the real life montage, and. That could either mean that they shoved in that plot just for the movie's sake, or she was real, but they broke up, so therefore it'd be awkward to include her in the real life portion. And I don't know, and I really don't care. You're right; it is kind of useless, and I wish that they would have taken the high road. No pun intended. I wish that they would have taken the more. Yeah, the high road, and just not shove that in there at all if they could help it. If it wasn't a real thing, or even if it was a real thing, they didn't need it. It provided nothing to the story.
The other thing that bugged me.
No girls in my gaming movie, please. No.
There's Barbie exists for a reason. This isn't like something I truly docked this movie for. This was more of a personal pet peeve.
Me neither.
And again, I never played the Gran Turismo games. I would assume this is probably faithful to the games. But, I really wish they would have had like an actual OST soundtrack for this thing. Like what I'm talking about is like the Need for Speed games. I remember they had like Hot Action Cop and Bad Religion. And it like gave that game, granted it's not a racing
Need for Speed
simulator.
Movie.
Yes, there was. And like it had like a pulse and a personality because of it. I wish that with Gran Turismo, they put like some music in this thing, like not just like what was composed for the movie. I felt like that. I think like there's again, a pun intended, a gear missing here that could have been intensified by like music choice. You said something about you made a line about a fast car. I'm like, Tracy Chapman's fast car. They should have put that in here. They could have put that in here for irony.
Dude, if they had made this movie Ridge Racer, Ridge Racer has a bitchin' soundtrack. The one I grew up with, it was like released in '96, and I did have a little wheel on the PlayStation 1. It was called Rage Racer. Rage Racer was the iteration, because they decided to break up the numbers. And there's a track called, it's kind of having a renaissance with a little on YouTube, just a tiny one in the community. Called Silver Stream, I think is the name of the track. It's an awesome track. I'll put it in our chat, just for the hell of it, because it's a pretty fun drum and bass track from the 90s, very peak 90s. But yeah, dude, I think our shared criticism here is that it's cookie cutter. This is a biography. It does justice. It does justice to the real life story, which I guess is the most important thing, and you don't want to F that up. And it's serviceable. It's solid as a movie. I had a fine time, but you want to? Can we get some justice for the gamers? Can we get some juice here for the real ones for all the sweaty gamers in their rooms right now? I don't know.
Somebody on Letterboxd said there's no way that like the 10 racers in this GT Academy, there's no way they would have been this hot. There's no way that they would have been this good looking.
Well, hold on. I'm gonna put it on screen for the people at home. the actual, of course I closed it. The actual like Jan, he looks like he could have played himself in the movie. That dude looks, well, of course I choose the nerdiest one. But the pictures they were showing of the dude at the end, he looked good, man. Everyone looked good. Everyone's fine. All the simulator bros, not just gamer bros, but the simulator bros, they tend to be
simulator bros are actually decent looking dudes.
They can be. They very much can be, because they care about how their car looks. They'll spend dozens of hours, as was plainly stated in the film. They'll spend dozens of hours looking, very carefully crafting their car.
There's probably already a think piece about how like people who play simulators are not technically like consider themselves gamers. You know what I mean? I think
he says that in the movie. It's like, I'm not a gamer. I play the simulator.
Yeah, he does say that. He says that to his dad. They're not technically
There's so many
gamers.
cringy lines. There's so many cringy lines about like, I have spent hours in the game. And it's like, Jesus Christ. Which, to be fair, I'm sure has been said many times before, but it's
and Jimon Hunsu, who plays his father, is like literally go outside and touch grass. like, literally, he wants them to play soccer, for Christ's sake.
So
you know what I mean? It's like literally touch grass. But no, it's not a bad movie, and it's less an advertisement for the game and more of a commercial for Nissan. It's also a great movie if you want to learn how to pronounce Nissan correctly too. But I would give it 2.5 out of 4. I gave it 2.5 out of 4. I think it's a very serviceable movie. I think it's entertaining. I think it plays well on the big screen. I think Blomkamp's aesthetic to it is very attractive and sleek. I don't think it's especially very memorable, nor is it going to live on really in great memory. But it's another, I got to be honest, it's like this interesting chapter in Blomkamp's still very young career as a filmmaker that really fascinates me completely. Just a different turn he's taken. And just like very unpredictable turn he's taken, really since District 9. It's fascinating. It's something that it's something we see a lot with these younger directors too. So I found myself most fascinated by this movie because of Blomkamp's involvement. Just like this is where he ultimately ended up too. It's not a bad movie. I just don't think it's a particularly memorable one.
So according to Wikipedia, budget is 60 million, box office is 55 million. I'm hoping by September it'll break even.
It probably will break even.
And I hope
you got to think it's probably $100 million. Probably 100. I'm ballparking here. 100 to 120 million.
So it's not a flop. It's not going to be a flop.
It's probably a break even type of a movie.
I don't care about this movie anymore than I already have talked about it with you. I just care about funding Neil Blomkamp's next venture.
I agree.
I'm assuming this is why he took that challenge on, or why he took this film on, Gran Turismo on, because come rain or come shine, even if the movie's bad, I appreciate his work. I honestly need to watch Chappie again. And I would even, not that I'm going to, because I don't have no time in my life, but I would even be willing to watch Demonic just to see how apparently bad it is and see what I can glean from it. Because his Blomkamp style, which is not Gran Turismo, or very little what you see in Gran Turismo, his style is so distinct and so worthy of praise and attention. Oh, I cannot believe we have not talked about the Halo short film that he made. Go watch that, Steve. Go watch that before you watch anything else. Look up Halo Neil Blomkamp, and it's like 15 minutes, possibly spread into 2 parts in 7 minutes. But go look up Halo Neil Blomkamp, and that is some of Camp Neil Blomkamp. Go watch that. That is some of the best Halo content I have seen in my life. And when I saw it in my younger years, I think that was around when Halo 3 was coming out in like 2007, 8.
Halo Landfall?
Yes. I think it's like 15 minutes. That's like the full thing. There's a complete story there.
Because that reminds me, he was attached to a Halo movie at one point.
And that was the project. And I think he wanted to spin it off into a bigger thing. And here's the thing. I think I remember him saying in some random ass interview, he had a difficult time working with a property as large as Halo and a company as big as Microsoft. I think that was the issue. Now, obviously, Gran Turismo is a completely different beast. It's a simulator. It's PlayStation, but it doesn't seem like Blomkamp had to like fight too much on it, on like his artistic vision.
It's a true story too.
Yeah, exactly. So whereas Halo is a whole different beast. That's a name, buddy. That is a massive story. There are other people in control of the lever there that really care about it. And Halo is a whole different beast. And I think he said that he was having difficulty with it, and he's like, okay, I'm done after this short film. Dude, the next Blomkamp project, whatever that happens to be, that is on our list, because he's not done, and I'm not done, following this. He's probably the most interesting director I've ever followed, because District 9 hit me so hard right between the eyes. It was a revelation at the time for me, and I cannot wait to see what he's got next.
I like it. Great review.
Oat Studios is the name of his studio.
I'm gonna watch that Halo Landfall short.
It's good.
I'm gonna watch it maybe tomorrow. I want to check that out.
Yeah.
We'll move forward here. I'm gonna give you the floor once again, Dom, to talk about this news story for about 10 minutes or so as we bleed into Sleepless OT with the VFX workers. And it's very fitting because we spent a decent amount of time talking about the effects of Gran Turismo over here, so we might as well pivot to this story right here.
Yeah.
In the midst of ongoing Writers Guild strike that doesn't look like it's ending anytime soon, tragically. SAG-AFTRA strike that doesn't look like it's ending anytime soon, tragically. Did you see the late night hosts all banded together for a podcast too? Did you see that?
I did not. I might listen to that.
They're going to be I just saw it briefly before we went on. They're going to be a part of a podcast now because it's been like over 3 months now since they haven't been on TV. So, and they're doing it in support of the striking writers too.
That's good.
Which is also cool to see. But moreover, we were talking about the VFX workers, the guys who really the men and women who really get sidelined in this industry too. Just one of the many. VFX workers at Disney have filed for unionization under IATSE. This also comes as Marvel VFX employees voted to unionize amid the ongoing strikes that are happening in Hollywood. So visual effects workers, basically what this means, Walt Disney, they filed for an election with the National Labor Relations Board that might allow them ultimately to unionize. And roughly 80% of 18 in-house VFX workers, that includes witness camera operators, data wranglers, and other production staff at Disney, they've signed union authorization cards confirming their desire to form a union under the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, known as IATSE. And I'm going to pass it off to you over here, too, because the legalese and the unionization, I know, is your favorite field over here, too, Dominic. You can explain this a hell of a lot better than I can. But this is no less fascinating, and it's an ongoing step in what feels like a major, major turning point in Hollywood as a whole.
So, as Steve said, only 18 VFX artists are applying to this thing. So if you see the headline, Disney VFX Union, you're thinking, oh, my God, every single dude that works on a computer at Disney that has anything to do with visuals, that means they're all unionizing. This is hundreds, thousands of people. No, it's only 18. But that is still monumental because look at who they're working for. Disney, right? They can smack down the governor of Florida like it's nothing. And and now they're facing a union in their own home. Now, 60-second history lesson. Walt Disney, the man himself, he was a self-starter, more or less, and he worked with various animators throughout his career. But by the time he hit the 50s, I want to say, he had a massive studio and a lot of workers, a lot of animators under his belt, a lot of people doing the grunt of the grunt work. You're talking like, hey, your job is to just draw Snow White or whatever, 50 times for like 2 seconds of animation, more or less. But someone got in his ear that, unions are going to be the deathbed of his company if he doesn't take that head on. And he took that head on. And that's a very, very, very Cliff Notes version of it. But since then, the Walt Disney Company in all its forms has been vehemently, they're the poster child for anti-union stuff and anything whatsoever. They have been staving that beast off for decades successfully. But now in this, what is the second great labor movement in America, more or less, here in 2023, they are now facing that in-house, and it looks like they're this pinky toe in the door may actually be able to do it, because it's only 18 because it's in-house. Most movies, period, let alone Disney, but most of them, their the massive teams of VFX are done third party, and the studios, they funnel in massive amounts of money to these third-party studios, which is fine. But if there's ever a union effort for the studio itself, you're probably not going to see that high of a number. So that's why you only see 18. But it's still monumental in the fact that it is Disney. And this is concurrent with Disney's other in-house. Now this is the other big one, which I think we talked about before. I don't recall, but Marvel. Now, Marvel is 100% in-house for Disney, and Marvel is its own entity within Disney, and therefore their VFX artists, which, oh my God, Kevin Feige, right? Feige, that's the name at least.
Feige, yep.
Yeah. He runs the joint, and he needs an army of VFX artists, and he has run that army through the muck and the mud on the way to Moscow. Not literally, but just running him like Napoleon through Moscow, to get his TV shows, his movies that he's just pumping out left and right. He needs that. So that honestly, that was the foot in the door for Disney as a whole, was for Marvel. But now this is Disney itself, which is really massive news if you look at the history of Disney. There's a great channel on YouTube called Defunct Land. I think you might have heard of him, Steve. I think yes. Joe has as well. Kevin Perjurer is a great documentarian, great, honestly, journalist if you look at the stuff the research he's done. But I think there's a video called The Greatest Party That Walt Disney Ever Threw, and that's a great video for that reason. But I think it gets into like Disney's anti-union efforts, Walt Disney specifically, and it details all of that. So I'll just open it up from there and just say that this is notable if you're in the weeds of movie news, labor news, and IATSE. If I was IATSE, and I think they are, they're going full steamboat Willie ahead on making sure that they win this election, that the 18 workers there win that election, because if they can get their foot in the door with Disney itself, my God, that's going to be in the history of labor for modern labor, because that is Disney, that is entertainment, that's Hollywood to a T, to a capital of H, and we'll see where it goes. We'll see where it goes, man.
IATSE's been at this for a bit now, trying to get the VFX workers to unionize as a whole, too. They want to form, I think I remember reading this, too, and this article might cover it. IATSE wants to make it a blanket thing for like a blanket VFX union. Just like the actors and the writers, they're not like, it's not like a Paramount writers or a New Line Cinema writers or a Warner Brothers writers. It's just a blanket guild or a blanket
It's
union.
Local 2, Local 3, Local 4.
Yes,
writers,
that's what they want.
5.
That's what they want to do for VFX workers, and they want to have them under this sort of umbrella protection, the very similar that the writers and the actors have too. And it's just, I mean, you might as well too. The iron's scalding hot right now. You might as well try and see if you can get this to move right now when there's a lot of things at least in flux. Or at least a lot like ongoing strikes and things like that. There's momentum. There's serious momentum. There's people that are pissed off, and usually when people are pissed off, things get done. But I mean, as of this week too, you even see that the writers and the studios are still at a standstill over talks. This is not ending anytime. This might go the rest of the year at this point. Yeah. I mean, this might bleed into next year at this juncture.
I think they're reaching day 80, 70 or 80. It hasn't reached 100 days yet, to my knowledge, the writers, right? But it's historic. This 2023 is a watershed moment for the film industry.
The writer's strike just hit as of today, 120 days.
Today.
Oh
my God! Wow, what perfect timing! They waited for Sleepless with Steve. Thank you, WGA.
120 days for the writer's strike, 47 for the actors.
Got it. Okay, that sounds right. But this I'm gonna keep saying this is monumental because it just is. And once it really catches fire within Disney, if they manage to do that, we'll see. Because Disney always has. There's the saying, "The mouse always wins," which is just a great saying. But it's true, right? I made a joke about the governor of Florida, but man, you just trifle around with Disney for a bit, they will bite. They will haymaker you into next week if you do not watch your back. However, whatever pithy political stunt you try to pull for a hot season pales in comparison to IATSE or the union folks that have been in this for generations through the Reagan years and clinging on for dear life during that time. But here we are now, and their fruits are certainly coming to blossom. I was going to say coming to labor, but it's interesting. I think with all of the union stuff coming to head, I will say this other bit of just labor/union news is that, and we'll see if the film industry catches on with this. The NLRB, the National Labor Relations Board, which is essentially the department of, for the body that governs labor here, they recently decided that 5 days ago, a new rule that completely flips unionization efforts on its head. So before, I don't know if Steve, you have anything else to mention with this story specifically. No, so I'll just go off onto this.
Go for it.
Before, if a bunch of workers in a company wanted to unionize, they would have to first go through an election and file it. If the employer didn't want to recognize it's like, nah, I don't recognize it, then the union, the hopeful union, would have to go to file a petition with the NLRB, the federal office that handles that, and then wait for all that bureaucratic BS to come through. And then finally the NLRB says, okay, you can have an election. We proctor this election, and then we'll see what happens. And then the BS happens there with all the politics and stuff. I say BS, but it's the stuff that needs to happen. That's politics for you. But anyway, recently NLRB 5 days ago made a change, rule change. It now flips on its head. If a group of workers want to form a union, they just have to, I don't know the mechanism exactly. I'm assuming just a very simple piece of paper or whatever. And they go, hey, we want to form a union. It is now on the employer. It is now on the employer to recognize it. Because if they don't, two things happen. Either one, they instantly become a union. Or two, then they have to call for the election themselves. So now it's been flipped on its head entirely, which means you may see in the coming weeks and months a bunch of unions popping up and a bunch of employers going, wait a second, what just happened? I thought, no, buddy, you thought wrong. The dark Brandon memes of Biden going, Jack, you thought wrong, buddy pal. This is a new dawn in American labor, where now if a bunch of people come together and say, hey, we want to form a union, they're probably going to get it by default because the employer was sleeping on the job. Just going like, it's the old rules. I can just ignore it and it'll go away. No, buddy, you got to actually engage with this now, because if the employer doesn't do anything, they just get the union. They just get it. I don't know if the Disney VFX people, if that'll apply to them, because it happened during the rule change. So that may not go through with them. But every AFL-CIO, IATSE, every single major union group in America, which is their own can of worms, they are going to hop on this new rule. Mark my words. Look for this. If you're into big labor news, look for this rule change. This may be the turning point. August 25th, 5 days ago, is when they called it. And that may be huge in and of itself. We'll see if that pans out. It may be quiet. It may be quiet for the fact that they want to keep it quiet so they can just get away with this. Look at Starbucks. Look see what Starbucks happens in the next couple months. But yeah, dude, I don't know if you heard about this, but it's pretty big.
Well, that's just it, though. I mean, this show has gotten a little bit tougher to do in some ways for news topics, just because there's just not a lot happening. There's not trailers being released.
Yeah.
There's no real movie news. Obviously, there's no productions that are shooting or anything, or actors signing on to new projects. So really the news that we do have, or the news that is being revealed, is news that's related either to the strike in some ways or these unionization efforts that are coming down the pipeline too. So that's something we'll keep our finger on the pulse of going forward on Sleepless. And Dom, I love having you on the show too for topics like these too, because you distill them down a lot better than I could in that regard. So excellent synopsis there, my friend.
Thank you.
Excellent stuff. That about wraps it tonight for Sleepless with Steve. Was a great show. Good to have you back, Dom. We'll have our compadre Joe back on the show next week. We're going to be reviewing Blue Beetle. And then the following week, we're going to be reviewing that documentary BS High. Haven't done a documentary on the show in quite a while. Long time. Been a long time since we touched on a documentary. BS High looks to break that streak. And it's a sports documentary, too. I think it's maybe less with sports and more with fraud, or something along those lines. Yeah, more Firefest than Super Bowl than March Madness. But we will touch on that in 2 weeks. BS High. Next week, we're going to be reviewing Blue Beetle on the show. In the meantime, you can catch all the previous Sleepless with Steve episodes and clips right here on this YouTube channel. And we'll be live next Wednesday. Same time, same place, 6:30 p.m. For Dominic Guanzon, Joe Viso in spirit, and yours truly, this has been Sleepless with Steve.